Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're so happy that you guys would brave the rain and come out for this event with all of us. My name's Rebecca. I'm one of the reference librarians here, and I just welcome you to this author event. We're so excited to have these authors today to talk about eating together, being together, recipes, activities, and advice from a chef dad and a psychologist mom. This book will be in the back, available for purchase and signing after the event. And without further ado, if you just join me with welcoming our two authors, Julian Clauss-Ehlers and Caroline Clauss-Ehlers. Thank you so much.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you all, but I'd like to introduce you.
Echo Julian, thank you all for being here today and coming out in the rain today. And also just a big thank Hampton for partnering with us. Oh, did I just turn that off? Okay. So I just want to introduce Julian. One of the things that I am not is a cook or a chef. I would say I'm a non-cook. During COVID, our children were very fortunate that Julian was felt they didn't know what they would do if they were relying on my food. So the book has been a real learning experience for me in terms of how to create recipes and how to create this food. Want to introduce Julian. I'm going to take this off the thing, who is born and raised in England. His father was born and raised in Argentina, which was our sort of connection. And Julian was a chef and restaurateur in the UK, award-winning in the UK, and then we met and decided that he would come to New York and had a restaurant, New York Times starred restaurant that was set to open right after September 11th, which was in downtown, which was very tricky. That restaurant did really well, serving Moroccan food. And now he runs two restaurants in the New Yorker Hotel. He also is a wonderful husband, father to our children. And we had this book. This book was suggested to us to write a long time ago, and it took us a while. And then during COVID, when Julian was home, when we were all home, we really started to write about this and kind of write about not just about food and recipes, but about connection and how do we build connection? How do we sustain connection? How do we listen to each other, communicate with each other? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and weave it in with sort of recipes and cooking and spending time in the kitchen. Then we want to really hear from you if you have any questions for folks online, if they want to sort of type in the chat any questions, about child development, about relationships, and about cooking, of course. And we're happy to also share some of our favorite recipes. So I'm going to pass it back to Julian.
Right. So I don't know if everybody hear me? Good. Okay. Thank you. I'll project. So the idea of this book came as Cece quite some time ago, and I never really found time to delve into this great idea that we had. And during the pandemic, it really gave us that time to write this book, and it was a fascinating experience.
For people who are either grandparents of young children or parents of young children, is our idea is a little different. It's really about eating mindfulness and kids being aware of ingredients in food and being aware of what they're eating and learning how to make choices about what they're eating rather than not knowing or are kind of hiding things in food, because at some point we're all going to grow up. And so having that skill of being able to make choices of what you want is important. And also, part of developing taste is also realizing what you don't like. And so, we sometimes have this idea like, kids need to eat all the fruits and vegetables. They have to like everything. And, when you think about it, there's some stuff that, we don't really like, so that kind of goes with, our own experiences. And it can also change really quickly. So I'm thinking again about an experience with Oliver over here where he used to, when he was little, like 3, 4, he'd eat like 2 or 3 bananas a day. Like he loved bananas. this was fantastic, so easy, great, portable snack, wonderful. And then like a year and a half ago, right? He decided he didn't like bananas anymore. And there was no reason, there was no, he didn't get sick. There was nothing that happened. He just didn't like them. But what he does love is he loves Izzy's chocolate banana bread. Izzy's his big sister right over here. Each of our kids have a recipe named after them, but she loves making this banana bread with chocolate chips in it, and Ollie will help her, and they make it together in the kitchen. And so Oliver really knows that the bananas are going in there, and he loves it. So there's ways that maybe he doesn't like the, bananas on their own anymore, but he will eat it in this recipe. So we just think it's really important for kids to like develop that taste palette and decide what they like by trying a lot of different things. And it's okay if they don't like everything, right? And there are different ways to kind of incorporate, like in the banana bread. I mean, of course, it has chocolate in it, but we gotta, it is what it is.
So these recipes are real recipes. Writing that chapter about fish, she was like really worried about this fish section.
So the chapters are organized around different things that we eat. So lunch, desserts, drinks, as Julian said. And then it ties in with like a theme of just, so like the dessert chapter. This was a perfect theme for the dessert chapter, is sort of people who are, we all can maybe be perfectionistic, and how to let that go, and how to be okay with taking a risk and making a mistake, and relating that to the upside down cake, that this is not perfect. And what can we learn when we're imperfect people, right? And that kind of goes with desserts, because sometimes, we have desserts, we feel like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I had that dessert. Well, yeah, it's okay to have the dessert. It's okay to make mistakes. And then each chapter has activities with it from young children to preteen and teen kids, and then to adults, of how we can practice stuff like this in our lives. So we do a lot around sort of self-care and making time for yourself, and how do you, reach out to others. Our soup chapter is all about sort of showing love by sharing goodness, is how we kind of talk about it. And the story in there is Julian's food mentor, who had passed away a few years ago, had a relative came to him and said, my adult daughter is sick, and do you know of someone who can help make, soups and things to help her go through treatment? And Julian said, of course, I can do it. And, she said, well, can I, I'll pay you, whatever. And Julian was like, no, of course not. And it was very cute, because then we would get every week, because Julian would make soups every Sunday, and we would get, something in the mail, like fruit in the mail or something like that. And then he would, put it in the soup, or figure out how to use it in the dish. And, it was so interesting, and the house just smelled so good. And then, we would pack it up, and she would, it was just really good, something, fresh that she could eat. And then it was funny, because then Julian started putting it on the menu at the restaurant, and then you became like one of the best soup places in Manhattan to go to. So interesting. So activities like in that chapter are things like, taking soup to someone you care about who's not feeling well, or, showing your love through food, and how you can do that at any age.
We're invited CC and I events. Very excited. We don't fight. And got back home before going.
The pie was covered.
Surprise, because I had a conception in my head of how it was maybe possibly supposed to look, and it didn't quite match that. And we thought, can't do anything about it now, so I'm going to take the pie. And so we
still covered. It was still covered.
And Anyway, so we had this fabulous meal. We were sitting on the and but surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but I mean, delicious.
Funny because recently I started writing a blog for Psychology Today. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, and wrote about this story. And the theme was go for joy. And it's like we were so stressed about the pie and trying to hide the pie. And then, everyone, you could tell everyone was like, oh, and then it was really good. And it's like, letting it go, it's okay. But, I don't know why. I guess because I was so surprised to see the pie that I actually took a picture of the pie. So that picture is posted in that blog. And then there's a picture of when Julian made that pie, also posted in the blog. They look very different. But it's so interesting because that got so many views, something that we all kind of struggle with. Like, how can we, in those moments, our lives are stressful, like, go for joy, go for happiness. And we really made these wonderful new friends that evening. And then the pie came out. And I was like, oh gosh, this is so embarrassing. Sorry, Izzy. But, it was okay. It doesn't matter. It's all right. We're together. It's okay. And even if it hadn't tasted amazing, it would have been okay. But I think that's like some of the pressures that we put on ourselves. Want to talk about one of your favorite recipes?
I think I've spoken about some of them already. And I was doing this event and I was preparing this good. And I was like, I was so happy. My work was done. I am good. And 16 years later, very same recipe in don't remember. I remember. I
Non-cook, my favorite recipe is like the really easy one. It's and of course also as a psychologist and a mom, it's for me this recipe is all about connection and building relationships, which is our homemade popcorn recipe, which kind of happened when we realized we didn't have any microwave popcorn in the house, which was my go-to before. So it's just three ingredients. It's popcorn, sea salt, oil, it's you put the oil in, let it get hot, and the trick is you don't put all your popcorn in the beginning. You put in like three kernels. You wait, you listen for it to pop. You have your bowl of other kernels ready, and then you add those. Well, you take it off the when the three pop, you take that pan off the burner and let it kind of, because you don't want those three kernels to burn. So you let things kind of simmer down a little bit for like 30 seconds probably. And then you put the rest of the kernels in and then it pops and you add your sea salt. It is a, really great natural snack. It's such a connector. Anytime Izzy comes home from college, she's at Newark and she's like, can you make the popcorn? The kids used to take it with them on their school trips and it's just a fun thing. It doesn't have chemicals in it and it's also, really economical. We also talk in the book about food waste and how we can prevent food waste. And this is just a really fun way to do that and to connect, with people you love. One of the things I learned from Julian and writing this book with him is about sort of the foods that we can actually use that we might think we could throw out. So like rotten bananas, or Julian would say brown bananas, that we don't want to throw those out. We can put those in the freezer. And I've been reminded you do have to take the peels off first. Don't freeze the whole banana, take the peels off, put them in, and then you can take them out and defrost them and use them for the banana bread. So that's like a really nice way to incorporate, something that you might think, oh, I can't use this. I have to throw this out. Same with the fennel fronds, leftovers actually, the food has an opportunity to kind of, all the ingredients have an opportunity to kind of go together. And oh, bye Izzy, bye Ollie. We embarrass them. No, it all has an opportunity to go together. So it's actually going to taste really good, in many cases, even better when you have the leftovers the next day. And it's so interesting. One of the things I learned about cheese from Julian is that actually, when you take cheese out of the refrigerator for like 10 minutes, it's actually going to taste better than when it is in the refrigerator. has a chance to kind of have those natural ingredients sort of come to the fore. So there's an activity in there about doing like a cheese taste test and which tastes better, the one that's, been out or the one that's just come out of the fridge. So there are lots of ways that we can kind of recycle food in a way and use food that we maybe could use. Psychology part of that recipe is really about tactile learning, that kids learn so much through, there are many ways of learning, but tactile learning is learning through, how you experience your world through like touching things and figuring things out. And so rolling the meatballs and kind of getting into that muckiness was really important. It was a really important way for Ollie to kind of learn about food in that way too. Also, one of the things we talk about in the book is like, we're not saying that you need to have dinner with your family together every night, because that's certainly not what our lives have been. We have our Sunday family dinner together once a week, because of Julian's schedule, also because of our kids' schedules. People are busy. So some of the recipes, it's really about you create a structure that works for your family or for your relationship, how you find time to be together, to be intentional about finding time in a way that suits like what you're doing in your life. And the thing about the meatball recipe that's really fun, like for working parents, is like you can just duplicate it and you can freeze half of it. It will stay really fresh. And then you just bring it out of the freezer and, defrost it, and then it tastes the same. It's really good. So, the other piece is, and this is, for parents, it's for partners, like how can you of just organically find time, right? Because if I were to ask like we have two teenage daughters, how are you? Fine. That's the thing that's going to happen. Or even like in a relationship, oh, do you want to hang out? Like Julian comes home late, and lately I've been like, hey, and then he's like, he's got the earbuds in, so he's like, oh my gosh, I'm watching my show. I'm like, okay, it's fine. So how do you sort of organically find time? And the kitchen is like the heart of the home in a way of how to do that. So like, again, getting back to the, Izzy's chocolate banana bread, it was right before she was leaving for her first year of college. As we all have experienced, she had gone through this COVID thing and literally spent the last year and a half of high school at home in her room on a laptop. And she was just really nervous, but she was making this banana bread. And I just, of course, happened to be there. I'm a non-cook, but I was just in the kitchen, right? Because I want to try to have a conversation. So I'm just pretending I'm doing something. She's there with Ollie and she's making this banana bread, and she's making a lot of it because what she wanted to do was to freeze loaves of it in our freezer so that every time we went and saw my dad, who lost my mom right before COVID, we would take a loaf to him, and it would, one, he loves it. He's always asking for it. And also, so that he knows that she's thinking of him. And what I learned recently is that every time we bring a loaf, because we always have it in our freezer now, he'll call her at college and say, thanks for the banana bread. But she was, making this banana bread, and it opened up an opportunity for us to really have this conversation without my saying, how are you feeling about it? What's going on? It was more like, she's cooking. She's saying, I'm stressed. I haven't been able to hang out with my friends in person for so long, and I don't know what this is going to be like. And, we, they got very comfortable at home. It was like, you really need to like literally leave the home from, being here because of quarantine. So it's a wonderful way to kind of have these conversations, right? And that, again, this is a parent example, but it can be a partner example. It can be an elderly, an older parent example. There are ways to do that, and we talk about in the book as well. Yeah, so we can keep talking, but let's open it up for questions. Yeah.
They can't answer that question.
Well, I can answer as his wife.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
So I had this from grad school, this great chili recipe. Easy, just need one pan, very simple, not a lot of chopping or anything, and it lasts for a long time. So I made this chili recipe. He comes in the kitchen. No, you got to do this. You got to do this. We did that once. And then, of course, it tasted great. So everyone's like, Julian made it. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened here? This is like, so then the next time I'm like, you cannot put anything in the chili because then everyone's going to think you made it. It didn't taste as good. Anyway, so it's interesting. It's like, it's a balance, I think. Yeah. And that recipe, interestingly, now I'm just thinking about it. It's not in the book. Chili's not in the book.
It's so current because last evening we had a couple over for dinner, and with the asparagus being so beautiful, I wanted to make an asparagus soup, and we had made one. My husband saying recipes and first one I used a lot of celery because I had a lot of celery, and it was one of the recipes called for spinach. So bottom line, well, I'm having it with our friends, and I'm going this. Oh, and then today we heated it up and had it before we came here, and I said, this tastes so good. And I said, whenever I have people for dinner, I never think anything tastes good. And I don't think I am like, oh, it has to be perfect. It is hard to time. Like the soup wasn't really hot enough last night, but I want to enjoy the community spirit, but it is a lot of effort to put a meal out, and then you end up not enjoying it. And yet it was fine. It was lovely.
Oh, it's fascinating. And
No, we can totally relate to that with the pie. And that's one of the things that, we about was we were having fun with these people that we were just meeting, some we knew, but we were getting to know them in a different way. It was just such a beautiful space. Then at the back of our minds, it's like, oh, that pie, they haven't seen it yet. It's covered. It really looks bad. So we assumed it wouldn't taste. Oh, and you do have to see it before you cover it with the ice cream. I think you suggested, you said, oh, can I put the ice cream on? They were like, no, you're relaxing. I could tell you were like, darn it. But, and then it was delicious. But even if it wasn't delicious, it would have been okay. Exactly what we were saying. The same. Gosh, like we're getting so stressed and it's okay. It doesn't. I kind of just do the party side. I've got some party moms over here. I kind of do the fun side. And then luckily, we do like a mom's thing, and we do like men's night. And luckily, not invited to that because he's not a mom, but he will prepare the food for it. Luckily.
And they had such a good time.
He had family in different parts of the tri-state area, and they were in another part, but used to be in New York. And so they would invite their family and friends to that.
My family and friends, tell me all the times that I'm pretty good, always very impressed, with my cooking. And so like a cookbook, for Christmas as a gift. And he continues on doing that. But, I grew up watching my mother cook my entire life. So I never cook based on recipes and books. It's all from my childhood memory or from just watching something on TV or I memorize, recipes. So I feel really bad that at some point I was making like my famous dishes with the book open in the kitchen to make my husband feel better. But I feel, and my son, who's 23, he's got my DNA, but, as far as cooking goes, but he follows recipes like by detail, he downloads, he opens the book. So my point is it bad that at this late age in my life, I'm feeling bad about not following recipes from a book? Like I feel bad that I don't look at books to cook. I just cook.
So can I answer the psychology one first and you do
Sure.
the cooking one?
Yeah, I got some.
Because he's
thoughts
got a
too.
long answer. I've got a short answer. So the short answer is this is wonderful. You found a solution and you found a way to make it all work. You have the cookbook open, they are being used, the cookbook is open, and then you are doing what you need to do and making great food. You totally found a solution. I think it's brilliant. So the recipes are all in his mind. They're really all in your time to write the book. He would send the recipe. I'm like, I don't even know what that's, there's not much here to work on. But you
Look, and I'll see what's available. I see what's good. So I obviously have to write down, replicate these.
doing what you're doing.
I have almost a similar type of question. When I go into pick up fish at Mike's in Amagansett, he'll normally just say, just throw it on the barbecue. That's it. Little lemon afterwards, fine. And then the family always says to me, it's wonderful. Are they just fooling me? Or,
Well, I'm sure, so this is it's a fascinating question, and I do actually want to answer it because I think one of the key having great produce to start. So if you're starting with something that's fresh, traveling like a few miles to your home, don't want to do anything to it. You want, that's when it should be eaten.
Of the salmon and cooking salmon. It's a recipe in the book. And our kids, since they were little, and now with Oliver and that's continued. Our older, our teenage girls also call it pink fish. And it is, Julian makes it, it's so good. And a friend of ours who's like an honorary grandparent was cooking the salmon recipe and then said, oh my gosh, I just realized that I had to cook the salmon on the other side, and that changed the whole thing. And there was no other ingredient. It was just cooking it on which side is the skin side down. Changed everything. So they're telling you the truth.
Crispy.
A little more time for questions, and then if anyone wants to have us sign a book, we can do that. Yes.
When we used to go to your house when the kids were little, preschool, embarrassing, but sour cream, and you tried to teach me that recipe once for dipping the vegetables.
Oh, right.
And until today, it's the most memorable flavor that I don't know what you did to that sour cream, but it was unbelievable. I hope it's in the recipe, in the book. I knew it would be on the book. I'm buying the book for the sour cream, dip. Incredible. And I'm sure it's simple to make.
Thank you.
For WNYC and the day before Thanksgiving this year. All of it. And this recipe, they talked about this recipe. Someone who I had just met emailed me and said, I made it and my kids are eating vegetables. It's so simple. It's delicious. It's fresh. You make it and then you serve it with like baby carrots and broccoli and cauliflower, and you just have it all, which is beautiful. Also, all the colors, you have it all out there, and then you just, sometimes I get home, I'm like, where are the chips? And I'm like, oh, no. Now I've got, veggie and I can dip, and it's great. And it actually, fills you up, in a way that really cool that you remember that. For registering for our wedding registry, we had to go back like 3 times because Julian wanted our china to be just plain white china because the food decoration on the plate, and I wanted a very fancy orange, gold, and red set. And so we actually did find a compromise, which was
Accent plates, yes.
my best friend from high school bought all of those for us for our wedding, which was good. But it is true in that, the food, making the food the center is beautiful. It looks appetizing. It's kind of makes you, I think that brings community and enjoyment. Fun that you remember that too. other questions or any questions from the chat? Anything from the chat online? No? Okay. Well, thanks for being here today and just hearing us share our experiences. Thanks for being here.